Finally, a visit with a writer of mystery novels. As I learned when we first met in 2005, Elaine Viets' hands-on approach to crafting storylines can sometimes be a physical as well as intellectual challenge.
If you work this job, you do not need a gym membership.
Has it come to this for best-selling mystery writer Elaine Viets, working as a housekeeper at the Holiday Inn Express in Highland, Illinois?
These comforters are what kill you.
Never fear, this is research for Viets' next book. Has it changed how you see women who do this work every day?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I will never leave a room without tipping anymore, because this work is so hard. We tip some guy who takes your baggage from the curb to the front desk. And here's people slaving away. I mean, lifting mattresses, running this heavy equipment. We don't leave them anything but dirt all over the floor. I've got to get the clean sheets.
Fans of the former St. Louis Post-Dispatch columnist are also big fans of her dead-end job mystery series. Protagonist Helen Hawthorne toils in one job after another that has no future and little pay. Bizarre murders that take place around Hawthorne break the tedium. More about the dead-end books a little later. First, let's find out what Viets has learned about hotel housekeeping.
Checkouts take more work because you've got to clean everything, whereas when people are staying, you leave their areas alone. You never touch anything that's theirs. You have to dust inside the drawers when someone's checking out. There's a lot more to be done.
Elaine Viets was born in St. Louis City and raised in North County. Where did she go to high school? St. Thomas Aquinas.
Which is North County, blue collar and Catholic. You know, St. Louisans always ask what high school you went to so they can figure out who and what you were.
Yeah.
And my high school doesn't exist anymore. So I'm kind of, you know, the woman without a country.
So this is your grandparents' house?
This is my grandparents' house, and they lived here until 1959. My grandfather bought this in the 40s for $3,000 cash with a garage.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
Some of Viets' fondest childhood memories included weekends in South St. Louis with her grandparents, Edward and Frances Vierling. Viets named one of her fictional heroines, Francesca Vierling, after Frances. The Vierlings lived on Scanlon, right at the corner of January.
Now, my grandmother's good friend, Mrs. Raines, lived next door. And they were running back and forth to each other's house for coffee and all that sort of thing all the time. But Mrs. Raines was her good friend. And this was a neighborhood where if somebody got sick, you know, they'd all come over and they'd bring food and covered dishes and really take care of each other. So it was a very good place to live. It's where I got a real sense of St. Louis and neighborhoods, and why I wanted to move to the city, because it seemed to me that city people took care of one another.
Go into the chapel and where.
While Viets was majoring in journalism at the University of Missouri St. Louis, she fell in love with and married Don Crinklaw, her English teacher. Afterward, she transferred to the Columbia campus to complete her degree. After you got married, did your husband also transfer?
No, my husband stayed here in St. Louis and taught, and I went to Columbia and came home on the weekends, which started about Wednesday. But I made it through school anyway. Actually, you know, a commuter marriage is a great idea for the first year, you know, when you're trying to work out everything. If you don't see each other, it really makes for a way to kind of ease in.
Little breathing room, maybe?
Yeah, it works very nicely. You miss each other so much you don't fight.
That's very important the first year. Straight out of school, Viets landed a job at the St. Louis Post-Dispatch.
I was a fashion writer. My qualifications were that I was a woman and I wore clothes. I'm not kidding. I applied for the job wearing a red polyester dress from a McCall's pattern that my mother made. We're not talking high fashion here.
Were you surprised when you got the job?
Oh, I was thrilled. In fact, my first story, I framed and put on the front door, the outside of the front door. To me, to work for that newspaper was the greatest thing in the world.
Fashion writer lives here.
Yeah. I didn't want to be a fashion writer. I wanted to be an investigative reporter. But, you know, you take what you can get.
And you ended up getting a column.
I ended up getting a column. I wrote features and in between doing fashion because I didn't want to be a fashion writer. To me, that was a girl job, and I didn't want to be a girl. And so I started doing features, and my features were very quirky and very personal. And it sort of evolved into a column, and I had a one-day column, and then I had a two-day column, and all of a sudden I was writing 4 days a week. And my column was eventually syndicated with United Media in New York.
In 1996, Viets was, in her words, spectacularly fired by the Post-Dispatch. It sparked an uproar among readers and resulted in a freelance arrangement for Viets.
And about that time then, I became a mystery writer. Being fired was the best thing that happened to me because I really liked being a novelist. I liked the freedom. I liked creating my own world. I liked having my own characters. Being a novelist is like being God. You know, you decide who lives and dies, who exists and who doesn't exist. And I had a wonderful time with this, and I felt like I came home. I really did. I like the mystery world. I like mystery writers. They're a very generous group of people, and they really help newcomers who want to be mystery writers. They were very, very good to me.
Which brings us back to the dead-end job mysteries. The fourth book in the series, Just Murdered, brought Viets back to St. Louis.
I worked at an expensive wedding dress shop on Las Olas. These are the kind of people who spend $250,000 on a wedding. Now, to me, that's a house, but nobody asked my opinion.
At the Matchachek branch of the St. Louis Public Library, Elaine talked to fans about the dead-end job books and the real-life jobs she worked in researching them. The mysteries are set in Florida, where Viets and her husband have lived since 1997.
One of the brides had a $10,000 wedding dress, and it had a 10-foot train behind it. And she said, "I love the dress, Mother, but I can't go dancing in it because the train was just too heavy." And I go, "Well, is it detachable?" No. And they all looked at me, and I thought, uh-oh, they know I've had my wedding at the VFW hall. You know? No, you don't get a dress with a detachable train for $10,000. You get a second $10,000 dress. And that's for the reception. The third book in the series is Dying to Call You. Dying to Call You is set at a telemarketer's. I actually worked as a telemarketer. I sold septic tank cleaner. My pitch was, eliminates odors, large chunks, and wet spots. The first book in the series is Shop Till You Drop. And in that, Helen and I work at the dress shop, and we sell bustiers to bimbos. I did extensive bimbo research.
Though she draws plenty of laughs on tour and in print, Viets is very serious when it comes to the plight of people stuck on the lower rungs of the economic ladder.
I have the greatest respect for people who work these jobs. Some of the people I worked with, there was one woman who worked 4 jobs. She divorced badly, and she had some medical bills. There was another woman who worked 2 jobs. She was in her late 50s. She had a grandchild who had cerebral palsy, and she was helping her daughter pay her bills. And the place where we worked, which was a survey-taking company, tried to cheat that woman out of her holiday pay.
Viets has several books in 2 separate series to her credit, plus a string of short stories.
Hi.
One of those short stories was recognized with a 2005 Agatha Award, a prestigious prize named for the legendary British mystery writer Agatha Christie. Dead-end book number 6, the one Viets was researching in Highland, Illinois, was titled Murder with Reservations. Since then, she's added more titles to the series, including Pumped for Murder, released in May of 2011. Would you change anything about your life now?
No, I like my life very much. And I think I'm doing what I want to do, and I consider myself one of the luckiest people in the world.